All right, thank you all for being here. I am excited today to be able to introduce Ines Direito. She is a senior research fellow at the Center for Engineering Education at University College London, and she's the chair of the Special Interest Group on Gender and Diversity in the European Society for Engineering Education, or CEPI. And she has agreed to come here, even though the time is probably pretty inconvenient for her, and we're really lucky to be on Zoom this year because it has allowed us to bring in people from farther away. So thank you so much, Ines, and I will stop my video and take it away.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fowler, for inviting me for this seminar series. It's a pleasure to be here today, even online. So bear with me while I share my screen in a minute and prepare the presentation. Almost there. Just juggling two screens here. But I think we're good to go right now. All right. So thank you so much for the introduction, Dr. Fowler. I'm a senior research fellow at the University College London Center for Engineering Education. And when initially Dr. Fowler invited me to present a seminar series, it was about the joint position paper that we've done at CEPI together with the American Society for Engineering Education. But then we thought that perhaps today it would be more meaningful to present a few pieces of research that we're doing at the Center for Engineering Education, particularly related to the student experience in the new curricula that we have that is called the Integrated Engineering Program. So that's what I'm going to present today. But before I do, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of my session. So I'll very briefly mention a few aspects of the engineering education sector in the UK, and there's a few differences with other countries, and particularly with the US. And then a very brief overview of the remit of the Center for Engineering Education. And then I'll focus the rest of my presentation on these pieces of research we've done so far with the IEP, and also some thoughts of future research. And I would love to hear your thoughts and suggestions, and who knows, we could collaborate in the future in some of these ideas. So in the UK, the number of young people enrolling in engineering education is very low and not as needed to supplement the needs of the country and the industry. And it causes it's a major cause of concern. And one of the major reasons for these is the perceived difficulty and also the unattractiveness of the courses. And STEM-related courses, and this usually manifests in the teenage years, and then students turn away from studying and choosing A levels in maths and physics, for example, which are the entry-level requirements for engineering degrees in the UK. Another difference or another particularity of the UK engineering sector is that so students don't enroll in broad engineering degrees. They already choose a specialism, an area they want to graduate in, such as civil, chemical, mechanical, etc. So there's no common first year. So it's really hard to explore which areas they prefer. And many students tend to drop out or even not deciding to pursue an engineering job when they graduate because they haven't had the chance to test drive their motivations and preferences. So that's the common case in most universities in the UK, although now we have new providers such as TEDI London, which is based in London and was founded by Arizona State University, King's College London, and the University of New South Wales in Sydney. They've designed a new course on global design engineering, and also UMich, the new model in technology and engineering, not located in London this time. And they're now delivering a master's in integrated engineering. So these new providers are different, and we're really interested to know how the student experience will be. So watch out this space, because we'll be able to collaborate with a few colleagues in the future to know this. So then very, very exciting space. In terms of accreditation, everything is overseen by the UK Engineering Council framework. But professional bodies representing each different engineering discipline also have a say in helping frame and design the programs at universities that suit the requirements of the industry for that particular engineering field. So the Center for Engineering Education is a joint venture between the Faculty of Engineering Sciences and the Institute of Education, the IOE, and it was formed in 2015. So we're quite new, quite young. But since then, since 2015, the vision of the center has remained pretty much the same. Is we want to improve the transitions into and through engineering for people at different stages in their lives, but also in different stages of careers. So through research and active engagement, we aim to encourage the study of engineering and allied subjects in STEM more broadly, and also drive curriculum innovations to help create the next generation of engineering graduates that are needed to address the complex global challenges that we all know are out there. So research and evidence-based practice is at the heart of the center's mission. We obviously like to publish academic papers and engage in conferences in engineering education, but academic publication is only part of the output. And we also have some sponsored reports and toolkits. That's something that has been increasingly being part of the center's dissemination activities. So although the center engaged in the breadth of research activities, we can say that our core areas of research are, well, naturally project-based learning or project-based learning, PBL, more broadly, and also diversity and inclusion in engineering education. That's something we've been investing very much in the last years. Also sustainability and global responsibility. And finally, Industry 4.0 and even 5.0. And also the center is heavily involved in the running and dissemination of UCL Integrated Engineering Program, the IEP. And in today's session, I'll present a few pieces of research we've been doing on that. I would also like to mention the MSc in Engineering Education, which was launched in September 2018. Again, it's a joint collaboration between the Institute of Education and the Faculty of Engineering Sciences. And this was initially designed for engineers, teachers of engineering, and engineering policy makers. And it aims to develop the skills and knowledge that are required to lead change, lead teams, enhance the performance of engineering in industry, and also improve the quality of engineering education in universities, but also influence engineering education policy. The program focuses on how to develop innovative strategies to improve engineering education. And to date, or since its launch, is one of the first of its kind in the UK, and to our knowledge is one of only a few in the world, and very exciting to have a larger cohort this year of around 22 students. I'm also very pleased to share with you the main ideas of three wonderful women that are working with us and doing their PhD with us. Again, versing one of the main topics that we're really focusing on, diversity and equity in engineering education. So Zhe Liu is interested in exploring the experiences and career choices of female engineering students at Chinese universities, and she will use an intersectional lens of gender and social economic status. Kate Bellingham is really interested in understanding why women in the UK decide to study engineering at university, what open days, what widening participation programs are helping making them this decision. And she'll be interested in comparing different universities, the ones that are more research focused, the ones that are more international or more local, to understand this landscape. And very recently, Guri Vino, which was one of the alumni, MSc in Engineering Education alumni, decided to pursue her studies in engineering education. And she was really keen to explore the impact of artificial intelligence on students' participation and learning experiences. Because she studied her engineering degree in the US. She's really interested in comparing or doing a comparison between these two countries, and she'll have a special focus on female and underrepresented students' experiences with AI. So it would be great if you have any thoughts, any ideas, or would like to discuss these ideas with our students. I'll be very glad to bridge and present you to them and make that happen. So back in 2014, the Faculty of Engineering Sciences at UCL implemented a multidisciplinary curriculum review of engineering education, which is called the Integrated Engineering Program, the IEP, where students engaged with practical application of engineering from the very beginning of their degree. So this curricular reform was motivated by the need to change the traditional education approach, which had very little group work and practical projects in the first 2 years. And with engineering departments working in silos, not interacting and doing things together. So the idea was to provide engineering graduates with the breadth of professional skills required by engineering jobs. So all students enter the IEP as part of one of their disciplinary specialisms. So they enroll as civil engineers students, mechanical engineering students, but they do share a common framework of problem-based learning experiences and also supported learning via a root branch model that threads through the degree. So beyond the technical skills, topics such as practical application, communication and teamwork, critical thinking and analysis, all these skills feature heavily, as well as sustainability, ethics, entrepreneurship, and leadership. So the centerpiece of the IEP is a set of problem-based learning elements, which are shared across all departments, as you can see in the figure. And they include multidisciplinary engineering challenges in term 1 of year 1, right in the beginning, right in first day, first week. Also 1 week scenarios when no other teaching takes place, so students are completely focused on that. And in the second year, they also have the How to Change the World, which is a 2-week interdisciplinary scenario that runs after the end of the exam period at the end of year 2, so after Easter time. And the 5 core pillars of the integrated program is precisely this demonstration of the interdisciplinarity nature of engineering. Students enroll with or engage with practical engineering from the start. There's a huge emphasis on design of professional practice and skills. The IP also has very, very strong support for students with not only with PGTAs, we also have IP ambassadors, which are students who live and breathe the IP philosophy and help us also bridge the needs and the requirements and make this communication between academic staff and students more effective. And also we aim to do this evidence-based teaching and maintain disciplinary strengths and alignment to research as much as possible. So in today's session, I'll present these following 4 studies or pieces of research with IP students that helped us make some changes in the way the IP was structured and taught, and also finally a more recent study on alumni with the alumni students. So the graduates of the IP, the first cohorts of IP students, and we wanted to know where they are now, what they're doing, and how the program helped not only choose their careers, but also how it is shaping their work-life experiences. So although the IP was launched in September 2014, data collection started 2 years before that, so in 2012, 2013, so that we could have a baseline for future comparisons. But to encourage academic honesty and transparency, staff from UCL Arena Center for Research-Based Education were commissioned by the faculty to organize and run the surveys and focus groups with engineering students. So by that time, the center didn't exist. So the faculty was responsible for doing this or implementing these pieces of research. So our colleagues at UCL Arena developed a survey based on NESI, which I think is pretty well known from of US and Canadian colleagues, the National Survey of Student Engagement. And they selected or used 29 questions about students' experiences during their current academic year. But they also designed and ran focus group sessions with students, focusing on what they liked about their current degrees, so the subject they are studying, trying to know what do they learn and how do they learn these things and what job that they can have in the future based on the things they're learning in their degree. Another question about what could be further developed in their programs, and this question was really useful to help shape any changes in the IEP. So questions about the lectures, the group work, the assessment. And finally, what change have they seen in the past year and how do they view these changes? So the survey, all students were invited to participate in the survey by the end of the second term, so before Easter, the Easter break, during 5 consecutive years, so from 2012-13 to, well, 5 years. I lost my academic years now, all the counting. And the focus groups will also run in the second semester as well, the second term. So participants who are studying at postgraduate level, whether in master's or doctorate programs, were excluded from this analysis. A few of them filled in the survey because we didn't have comparable data with the IP. So the IP is usually the 3 years of the bachelor's degree, but most students tend to do the four years of study for their master's. Although the IP is more present in the first 2 years of the program, and there's a few elements in the third year if students decide to do a minor, but that's it. The fourth year doesn't have a strong IP presence, at least not for now. So data was collected from 396 students across these 5 years. 188 were non-IP students and 208 were IP students in different years of study. 1/3 of the participants identified as female in both groups. As well, in both groups, half of the participants identified as white and the third identified as Asian. We have a huge proportion of Asian students, particularly from China, all across UCL, but also at engineering. And the proportion of UK students was significantly lower in the IP group, at least the participants of the survey. So we have to have that in attention as well. So the respondents in the survey, the IP students were more international than the non-IP group. So there are a few elements that we had to interpret according to that. So the major findings of this piece helped informed, as I said, Indigo, the implementation of the IP. But I wanted to brought here today a few examples that I think were really, really interesting. And one of them, it's very basic indeed, but it really shows it was that the IP was making a difference, because IP students in both surveys and focus groups were more likely to mention that they had more class presentations, working teams, and that they were also more likely to discuss ideas outside of class and spend time doing that outside of class, which was quite surprising compared to non-IP. And this in a way shows that they were quite enthusiastic about the things they were learning. The way they were learning was different. And they showed more enthusiasm about this in comparison to what the non-IP students were telling us in these focus groups. So this was quite a good incentive to our colleagues to continue their work in shaping this new curriculum. The other interesting finding, and we had anecdotes to support this as well, was that there were some differences in how students rated their relationship with academic staff. So we also asked them to rate their relationship with other students, academic staff, and administrative personnel using a scale of 1 to 6, to address their level of satisfaction with these relationships. And so there are no differences between IP and non-IP students regarding the assessment of the relationship with other students. It's the blue lines on the top of the graph. But there were some differences in how IEP students and non-IEP rated their relationship with academic staff. So overall, IEP students were less positive about their relationship with members of staff. And this was quite relevant in year 2. So there was a decrease in satisfaction in second year. According to the information we collected in the focus groups, participants reported that coursework was more intensive in second year, more intensive than expected. So we think that this might have impacted their assessment or their satisfaction with academic staff. Another positive thing is that when asked to what extent their experiences at UCL contributed to their knowledge, skills, and personal development, the IP students were more likely to mention that UCL helped them acquire broad general education and develop their ability to solve complex real-world problems than non-IP students mentioned in the focus group. So this was a positive result as well. So this was the pre-baseline and the first year experience data collection we had with IP students, but our colleagues also developed a survey with the first cohort, the very first cohort of nearly 700 engineering students that started their studies in the IP in September 2014. So of these, around 309 students completed a short online survey via Moodle at the beginning of the term across all engineering departments. And the main aim of this survey was to understand the initial perceptions and expectations of the students upon entering their engineering education at UCL. So the first set of questions in the survey asked students to ascertain the future opportunities they seek as engineering graduates, as well as their own learning expectations and anticipation of the most beneficial and most enjoyable learning experiences during their time studying engineering. A second part of the survey asked the students to rate their level of agreement using a 5-point Likert scale on a series of statements regarding their reasons for choosing to study engineering and to study engineering at UCL, but also questions about the role of engineers and expected career outcomes. And finally, a third section asked students to reflect on their confidence levels on a set of skills which are considered to be essential to anyone pursuing a career in engineering education. So 25% of the respondents identified as female, 75% as male, which pretty much corresponds to, represents the type of students we have at UCL. The breakdown by domicile status was around 35% British students or with British nationality, 16.2% European students, and the large group was constituted by overseas, so non-European students, again, which is quite common at UCL. So students were asked to select what opportunities would they most like their degree to offer on graduation. And most students expected to be able to have a career that suits them and makes them happy. That's good to know. But they also, perhaps the most selected responses after that was to have expanded my knowledge, skills, and attitudes in engineering and beyond. So this one here. Around a quarter of students selected to contribute positively to the world around me, to work on exciting real-world engineering projects, and to earn as much money as possible, which is quite important as well, because, you know, as study fees are quite high and quite expensive. And when these responses were analyzed by gender, so we have in the graph represented in orange, it's the male students' responses, and in black, female students' responses. There were a few differences. Just a few statistical significant ones, but again, with very small effect sizes. But they were interesting nonetheless. So female students, the three top opportunities that female students would like to have were to be able to have a career that suits me and makes me happy, followed by to work on exciting real-world engineering projects and to contribute positively to the world around me. Whereas for male students, the top 3 opportunities were to be able to have a career that suits me, again, similarly to female students. But then the differences were that they were more likely to select the options, expand my knowledge, skills, and attitudes in engineering and beyond, and also to earn as much money as possible. These were the top 3 for male students. So again, although not non-significant, there's an interesting pattern here. It suggests that female students tended to choose people-oriented statements, such as real-world engineering projects, contribute positively to the world, over males' things-oriented choices. So it's about expanding knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and earn as much money as possible. But we need, obviously, to further down our analysis to better understand, potential differences in career preferences and intentions. This was the picture at entry, almost in day 1. We also asked students to tell us more about their learning expectations. And the top 5 expectations of studying at UCL were build technical knowledge, solve real engineering problems, learn to think like an engineer, build knowledge and collect information for my future, and finally, improve my communication, presentation, and technical writing skills. Again, no statistical significant differences were found between female and male students, but the largest difference between these 2 groups was in regards to exploring and improving design and making skills, with female students being more likely to expect that than their male counterparts. We also asked students about the 3 most beneficial educational experiences, and they thought that engineering team-based problem solving, authentic engineering industry experiences, as well as activities and experiences to develop professional skills such as leadership, team working, and communication were the most beneficial. On the other hand, the most enjoyable educational experiences they expected to have were engineering team-based problem solving, engineering labs, and authentic engineering industry experience. So both female and male students selected the same 3 most beneficial educational experiences, but when it comes to enjoyable activities, there were a few differences. So female students were more likely to select activities and experiences to develop professional skills, such as leadership, team working, etc. over here. And engineering team-based problem solving and engineering labs. Whereas for male students, the 3 most enjoyable activities were engineering problem solving, engineering labs, and authentic industry experiences. So it looks like for female students, all this learning on professional skills was more enjoyable than for male students. And this, in a way, confirms a few of the stereotypes that usually students bring in first year and how they decide to split work if they work together. So it's interesting to verify that in first year students' experiences or expectations about learning activities. So overall, students were agreed that they were very pleased to have chosen to study engineering. They can see a variety of jobs upon graduation, and they're happy to have chosen engineering at UCL. They also tend to agree that engineers need to understand the societal impact of their professional decisions. And female students were more likely to agree with that statement compared to male students. Not only that, but also that the role of engineers is to solve the major societal and environmental challenges. And then we also ask these questions about how students felt, how confident they felt in those skills. But this is a quite complex analysis because it's a bit of a chicken and the egg problem. Are male students more overconfident than female students? So how can we compare these differences when it comes to gender, right? But overall, as you can see, male students rated their confidence in all the skills and abilities higher than female students. And there were a few statistical differences in regards to solving technical engineering problems, making intelligent estimates of size, scale, quantity, etc., and applying technical knowledge. So a lot of technical issues here that it looks like female students are less confident, or male students are more confident overall than the rest of their colleagues. So this was a snapshot of what we've done in 2014. A few interesting findings, although not that significant in terms of statistics. So in 2018, we decided to expand that survey and include other elements. So at the early stages of data collection for the IP, and in order to study the student experiences in navigating the program, this data was collected through focus groups and online surveys. And by that time, or at that time, no data on psychological factors such as grit and mindsets were included. And I'm mentioning grit and mindsets because those two factors were being increasingly mentioned by the literature, by the new providers in terms of how they were planning to recruit students to their degrees. So we were quite interested to know how gritty or how was the growth mindset of our incoming students. So in 2018-19, we started collecting data through, again, an online survey, and we were planning to do a longitudinal study of such factors. So during the first weeks of 2018-19, so we invited incoming engineering students to complete an online survey, again, comprising statements about their self-confidence, as we've done in 2014, but also included a few questions adapted from the Apple survey, questions particularly on motivation to study engineering, and also the grit scale and the mindset scale. Unfortunately, only 102 students out of 800 participated in the survey, and that is something that I would love to discuss with you all today, is how to engage students in this type of data collection. It's becoming more challenging every year, we find. But we had some interesting data to share from this data collection. Again, a quite balanced or quite well represented gender distribution. Most of our students or respondents were overseas as well, and the vast majority were second generation students. We didn't analyze, or I'm not presenting today any differences regarding the engineering major or even ethnicity, because it's such a small group sample that I will just focus on major gender differences that we found in the survey. So again, they were asked to rate themselves or rate their level of confidence and ability to perform a set of different skills that are commonly seen as being quite desirable for engineering graduates. And again, as a group, female students rated themselves significantly lower with regards to, I think, all of them, but particularly in solving ill-defined real problems and applying technical engineering knowledge. So this technical aspect prevails in comparison to the first round of the survey. These differences were not statistically significant, but interesting. So again, female students were more likely to rate higher on these two skills, working effectively in teams and writing technical reports. Again, this supports a lot of anecdotes and knowledge we know from teaching and research and analyzing gender differences. Apologies for the huge table. I hope you'll be able to see, but I'm more than happy to share the slides once the session is over. So there were no significant gender differences in terms of motivations for studying engineering. When analyzing these motivations using the Apple structure, the Apple survey structure, we can see that the most relevant of the motivations were intrinsic. So that included motivations related to social good, But nonetheless, male students were more likely to rate higher in statements concerning intrinsic motivation, such as I feel good when I'm doing engineering, I think engineering is fun, whereas female students were more likely to rate higher in statements related to the social good of engineering, which is another category that that was used by the Apple survey to analyze motivations. So they rated higher in statements such as engineering skills can be used for the good of society. We also explored some correlations between these motivations and students' grit. And we found that among female engineering students, grits and engineers make more money than most of other professionals, and engineers are well paid. There's a relationship between grit and those two statements, which suggests that women with lower grit levels were more likely to have financial motivations to study engineering than the ones with higher levels of grit. For male students, positive correlations were found between grit and three specific intrinsic psychological motivations. It's about engineering is interesting, I feel good when doing engineering, and I think engineering is fun. For female students, a moderate negative correlation was found between mindsets, growth mindsets, and statements, my parents would disapprove if I choose a major other than engineering, which suggests that parental influence motivation was more likely to be relevant for women with a fixed mindset than a growth one. So there are a few interesting patterns of grit and mindset and how they could relate to whether motivation to pursue engineering is intrinsic or not. But it's something that we wanted to explore in more detail and ideally with interviews. One of the interesting outcomes of exploring all these things with IEP students was that we were able to collaborate with other colleagues interested in knowing more about how these psychological constructs influenced or had an impact on students' experiences. So back in 2019 and finally published on paper format, we've conducted a systematic literature review of grit in engineering education research. And also after that, with colleagues from South Africa, so both Anita Campbell and Mashadu Mokiti, they teach maths to engineering students. And we've done a systematic literature review on interventions that were designed to help students develop growth mindsets. So these two are available. They're open source, they're free to read. You don't have to have a signature of the European Journal for Engineering Education to have access to these. So it was a really nice outcome of all these discussions we had, not only in the IEP, but also with colleagues in other institutions and in other countries. And more recently, we've run a set of interviews with the first cohort of graduates who graduated in 16-17, if they've done a BEng, a 3-year program, or a MEng in 17-18. So we know that most studies on engineering graduates' perceptions and outcomes use quantitative methods for data collection, very similarly to what we've done to assess experiences. So it's pretty much surveys and quantitative data analysis. And usually these surveys include a list of skills that need to be ranked by order of importance of relevance, and they are used as a tool to identify industry needs as well as skills gaps, right? That's the most common thing we see at this level. However, these surveys are typically based on prior understandings of what engineers do in their work and or should learn as students. And this leaves no space for possible emergent findings and hidden aspects of being an early career engineer. On the other hand, we also know that qualitative research methods are better suited to explore these subjective experiences. And in particular, graduates' perceptions of the impact of a new curriculum such as the IEP and the transitions to the workplace. So in this recent study, we aimed to investigate how alumni perceived the relevance of the IEP on their preparedness for work and how the program matches the needs of their industries. So we've interviewed 15 graduates and conducted a thematic analysis of transcripts to describe how they perceived and related their experiences to the workplace. So we've designed a semi-structured protocol based on questions that were already used in other studies. So questions such as, what have you been doing since graduation? And we wanted students to update us on their career trajectory. We also asked students to describe a normal day at work and what kind of challenges they face and how well prepared they feel for such challenges and what elements of the program help them to address those same challenges. We've also asked about what knowledge and skills from the degree have they used in their work, what they did learn on the job compared to the things they had to learn at university. And then we also wanted to have this, inside perspective of what are the good features and deficiencies as they see them now of their university program. So interviews were conducted during COVID-19 pandemic, which was quite interesting because most of the students were working remotely in their current jobs, but they already had at least 10 to 12 months of working experience in their current positions. And we used a purposive sample. So we contacted the UCL alumni network to help us reach out to students through mailing lists that they usually send quite regularly. But we also used LinkedIn and UCL LinkedIn, and a few studies also used this to track and contact graduates from their own institutions. And this was quite useful because many graduates share their professional details publicly on that platform. So it was a less intrusive way to get in touch with our potential sample of participants. So the selection of participants was based on different criteria when they were available, of course, in order to capture different experiences and backgrounds and to yield maximum diversity in the responses. So we wanted to recruit students working in different job sectors. So we were interested to interview students who were working in engineering related industries, but also non-engineering related fields. And we had a few that are working in finance and consultancy. We also wanted to have a diverse group of students or graduates in terms of graduate domicile. So we wanted to include UK-based, but also international students. We wanted to capture different levels of qualification, so include BEng or BSc and also MEng students. And obviously we wanted to include a diverse sample of students in terms of gender. So we conducted these interviews late in the summer, and I've conducted the 15 interviews because I was not involved in teaching these students, not in the delivery or administration of the IEP. And we thought that this would be the best case, to encourage openness and critical feedback about previous undergraduate experiences, but also to maintain consistency of the style of the interview. On average, the interviews took around 40 minutes, 45, depending in length, and were audio recorded, so and then fully transcribed. And they were all conducted online, as we know, because COVID was already happening. There are some interesting differences that we have to take in account, and we're doing that now in the analysis, that a few of these interviewees were recruited as IEP ambassadors. So they lived and breathed on the IEP. They were quite close to the program. So they were more familiar with the terminology that was used to describe the program. And usually these participants shared more elaborate perspectives when discussing their undergraduate experiences. But we have a quite balanced sample on that regard. We have a few IEP ambassadors, most of the participants were not involved in that role. So again, 15 engineering UCL graduates from the first IP cohort, 5 female, 10 male. Of the 15 participants, 8 were international students, 7 originally from European countries, and 1 from an Asian country. All participants were working full-time at the time of the interview, and one of them was not working but was studying towards a PhD, and he was doing it full-time as well. I must say, there in the US. Most of them, except 5, well, 10 were working in engineering related fields, in industry sectors related to their engineering majors. And the other students who were not working in engineering related fields were doing it in, so we're working in finance, a consultancy. But curiously enough, most of them were working in big international, large companies with offices in a few different places in the world. Interestingly enough, most of these alumni remained in the UK for work purposes, and only 2 went abroad. 1 went back to their home country, and another went abroad to study. So today I'll just provide, a sneak peek of the analysis. We're still working on that, and hopefully we'll be able to share the final results in a journal paper, and I'll gladly share that when it's out. So again, as I said before, the interview questions, provided much of the student structure for the thematic analyses. We've done that. We thought it would be the best methodological approach to use, because we really wanted to answer to those specific research questions. And we also wanted to explore the role of specific elements and skills developed in the program. So that's why we thought this type of analysis would be more suitable. And it was also used by other researchers who explored alumni perspectives and experiences in the workplace. So just a sneak peek of 2 main themes around what knowledge from their degrees and the IP in particular have students used in their work. And the major one is problem solving. So Adam, it's a pseudonym. It's a student. Well, it's now a graduate. He's not working in engineering related jobs, but the way he was taught in the IEP, the structure of the 8-week term, having these very specific deliverables, this very strict timeline, it's really, he explained that it really mirrors what is happening in his current job. So he felt this was sort of a natural extension to coming out of university. So very similar to the experiences he had in his program. The other big one is around professional skills, in particular communication and working in teams, which are core to the IEP, right? And it was quite interesting to hear students say that, or graduates say that they were quite well prepared in comparison to other colleagues who studied in different universities. They were quite confident in writing emails to and communicating to all sorts of people in their jobs, not only with the client, but also with the CEOs, because they had this experience of interacting with industry so much throughout their degrees that they feel really confident in doing that and can do it very quickly. And again, all these experience with teamwork and working with different people from different backgrounds, different cultures, and how to, the IP also prepare them for that, because by default is a very international program, but also how to manage the different priorities and deadlines. It's also helping these graduates on a daily basis. So very, very good signs that the IP is addressing these elements, and it's being useful for students. And finally, I think I'm already speaking for a long time. I would love to start a conversation with you all. We always had in mind doing a longitudinal study. We have plans to do that. And one of the things we would like to do is to understand how students develop these skills throughout their degrees, not only the technical skills, but also the soft skills. How does that happen? Right? We understand that these things are working out for students, but how is that, and how can we improve that? But it's been quite challenging to implement that at UCL for a variety of reasons, and for internal processes and all the ethics committee, which is a different totally session. But we have plans to do that. And we also are looking at collaborative opportunities with colleagues at TEDdy London, which just launched their program in September 2021. We would love to compare their student experiences with UCL student experiences. And we would like to focus a survey or even focus groups with students based on two major themes. One is self-regulation. All these new degrees, all these new programs, but also the IP requires a lot from students and how they self-regulate their learning, but also their mindsets, their attitudes to failure. That's something we're really keen to explore in more detail. And the other thing that is really important, and we think that ties really well to some of the differences we've been observing so far, even in terms of not only students' background, but also students' gender, it's about sustainability and environmental attitudes. It looks like, from our experience and the data we've collected, and from the interviews, it looks like, women who study with us have this more developed at the beginning of their studies. But again, this could be just an anecdote, and we would like to dive deep on that as well. And it's one of the core themes we are interested in doing more work in the center. And again, we would like to continue with online surveys and explore student experiences and run focus groups. But I think these two last themes that I have on my slide are things that I would like to discuss with you and know your experiences and perspectives on this. It's becoming quite challenging to engage students in this data collection method, and we also face a few challenges, not only internally, but also when we want to collaborate with colleagues elsewhere in the world in terms of what data can we collect and share with others, and things that really dear to us and that are key to the research on broadening participation, on diversity, inclusion, data such as ethnicity or self-identity in all sorts of important variables is seen as a sensitive data, and we have some limits of what we can share with others or not. So just between brackets, just sharing these thoughts with you, because it's something as a researcher really it's limiting the things we can do at UCL, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And I think that's all for me now. I've added a few references here that were mentioned in the previous pieces. I'm more than happy to share this slide with you. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you so much. There is a question already in the Q&A if you could see it, and everyone should feel free to put your questions in the Q&A or in the chat space. So, Dr. Direito, someone asked back when you had the list of men and women who had said which pieces were more important to them. And the question was about whether those came from some sort of multiple choice questions or if that was an open-ended question, and how you came up with the labels if it was open-ended.
No. That was defined by our colleagues at the beginning, because we wanted those statements to express what we thought the IP was, or the core elements of the IP, and we wanted to know which ones were more important to students. So yeah, but I think that survey didn't include many open-ended questions on that front. No. So those labels were related to the IP.
You also have someone in the chat asking if they can have access to the slides.
Yes, absolutely. I'll make sure that I'll send it to you.
Okay,
After
perfect.
this,
I can send it back out to the attendees. Also, the recording of this will be up on YouTube. If you're okay with that, Dr. Direito. I didn't ask you that yet.
That's
I'll
fine.
ask you
That's
after.
fine.
Okay, so you don't have to do it on record here. no one else is jumping in with questions, I'll ask about, you showed a lot of really interesting gender comparisons, and I wondered if you had also considered international versus domestic students and what patterns you were seeing there.
Yes, we've also explored a few of those things, but curiously enough, there wasn't it wasn't that clear as gender differences. The sort of responses were quite similar. But interestingly, again, when we interview students, it's a different perception, right? And from these 15 interviews we've done in the past year, there are some differences on how students approach, challenges and the way they interpret their education, or the things they want to do in the future is usually quite different. Maybe because when students decide to choose to study somewhere else, they have their homework is a bit more detailed on why I'm studying in a different country and why at this institution. So maybe they're differently prepared for that. But it became quite clear when we interviewed graduates. I think they're more looking forward to work internationally and globally than UK-based students. But again, obviously we need more data to support that impression. But in terms of experiences, they were quite similar. I think the area where we found more, where it was more nuanced was about feedback. I think UK students who studied at secondary level at UK are more familiar with, interacting more often with the lecturers, and feedback is something that is expected in more detail, whereas for international, that wasn't, many students didn't know what to expect in terms of feedback from their lecturers. That was something that was quite clear, or more nuanced on that front, yes, but not on the other areas, not as much, no. There's another one here. Oh no, it's the same one. Okay.